We have 3 readings today. The first from Matthew, chapter 13, verses 10 through 17. The purpose of the parables. Then the disciples came and asked him, "Why do you speak to them in parables?" He answered, "To you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. For to those who have, more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. The reason I speak to them in parables is that, seeing they do not perceive, and hearing they do not listen, nor do they understand. With them indeed is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah that says, 'You will indeed listen, but never understand, and you will indeed look, but never perceive.' For this people's heart had grown dull, and their ears hard of hearing, and they have shut their eyes, so they might not look with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and turn, and I would heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. Truly, I tell you, many prophets and righteous people longed to see what you see, but did not see it, and to hear what you hear, but did not hear it." Our second reading this morning is from Acts chapter 22, verses 1 through 16. "Brothers and fathers, listen to the defense that I now make before you." When they heard him addressing them in Hebrew, they became even more quiet. Then he said, "I am a Jew born in Tarsus in Cilicia, but brought up in this city at the feet of Gamaliel, educated strictly according to our ancestral law, being zealous for God, just as all of you are today. I persecuted this way up to the point of death, by binding both men and women and putting them in prison, as the high priest and the whole council of elders can testify about me. For them I also received letters to the brothers in Damascus, and I went there in order to bind those who were there and to bring them back to Jerusalem for punishment. When I was on my way and approaching Damascus about noon, a great light from heaven suddenly shone about me. I fell to the ground, and I heard a voice saying to me, 'Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?' I answered, 'Who are you, Lord?' Then he said to me, 'I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom you were persecuting.' Now those who were with me saw the light, but did not hear the voice of the one who was speaking to me. I asked, 'What am I to do, Lord?' The Lord said to me, 'Get up and go to Damascus. There you will be told everything that has been assigned for you to do.' Since I could not see because of the brightness of that light, those who were with me took my hand and led me to Damascus. A certain Ananias, who had been a devout man according to the law, and well spoken of by all the Jews living there, came to me, and standing beside me he said, 'Brother Saul, regain your sight.' In that very hour I regained my sight and saw him. Then he said, 'The God of our ancestors has chosen you to know his will, to see the righteous one, and to hear his own voice. For you will be his witness to all the world of what you have seen and heard. And now, why do you get up? Why do you delay? Get up, be baptized, and have your sins washed away, calling on his name.'" And our third piece this morning is from 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 2 and 3. "You yourselves are our letter, written on our hearts, known and read by all, and you show that you are a letter of Christ, prepared by us, written not with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God, not on tablets of stone, but on tablets that are human hearts." This is the word of God for the children, the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Thank you, Sue, and Jeanne will bring us God's words this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to first thank all of the dads out here. This is Father's Day as well, and we are certainly grateful for all the dads in our lives. And also, I feel doubly blessed today to be able to hear the glorious music from Mark Thallander. You played at our church in Grant Memorial in Presque Isle a few years ago, and it was just a real blessing to walk in and find we would be hearing your music again. And of course, Mary Jo, who's such a gifted musician, and enjoy the choral society when we get together during the winter. I'd also like to introduce my husband Richard out there, who brought me here this morning, and my cousin Susan, who is back in the back row there. Susan Warboys and my husband. So, once upon a time, did your ears perk up? Were you wondering, is she going to tell us a story? Ever since childhood, I have heard those words with great anticipation. Something within us loves a story. Story is as old as human history. Long ago, the clans gathered at evening, as evening approached, waiting eagerly to hear the hunters relate the details of the hunt. Travelers were expected to bring news of their exploits and adventures as they stopped and rested a while on their journeys. Geographical sites such as mountains and rivers and forests held their own significance in myths and legends. As we know, Mount Katahdin has its many stories to tell, ancient stories as well as stories today. These were passed from generation to generation, these oral stories that formed their unique identity, their culture, their customs, and their language. Stories are the very stuff of our lives, and they have power that is immeasurable. When we were born, we became part of a story beyond our imagining, because stories are the foundation on which we build our lives. From childhood, we learn the stories of those who have gone before us, within our families, our community, our faith community, and the events and the people we read about in our history books. Also, stories abound in the Bible, beginning with the story of creation. Why do we tell stories? We tell stories to communicate, to entertain, to inform, to express ourselves, and to warn. We tell stories to connect with one another. Some stories make us laugh. Some draw out our compassion and empathy, while others relate tales of adventure or teach us a lesson. Many people find healing and comfort in support groups, such as Alcoholics Anonymous. There are therapy groups as well that allow people who suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, those who have experienced abuse or painful experience, or they find healing, relief, and support by finally sharing their stories with people who understand. We also tell stories to entertain and to teach our children. How many times, when you were very young, did a story begin with, "Once upon a time"? Was there a prince or a princess? A troll? 3 bears? A wizard? Or a story of how much Jesus loved the children? My dad was a storyteller. At the dinner table, he would tell us the stories of our ancestors, our great-grandparents, our great-grandparents, and even some stories of their own foibles. These stories, which are woven together, gave my brothers and me an understanding who we were as a family. The beauty of storytelling is that a story will be remembered by its listeners at about 75%, whereas the content of a lecture is retained at only about 5%. Stories are more engaging, meaningful, and enjoyable. I'd like to share one story that my dad often told on himself. This story is for entertainment, though the embarrassment that he experienced still rankled. I call this story, "The Minister Came Calling." My mom and dad moved into the second floor of an apartment building on Braddock Avenue, outside of Pittsburgh, where I grew up. Mrs. Craig was the kind, elderly landlady who lived downstairs and took the young couple under her wing. One day, Mrs. Craig and my mother Ruth sat down to play gin rummy. They were upstairs in Ruth, my mother's name, Ruth and Jeanne, my dad's name, apartment. So they're upstairs on the second floor, and Mrs. Craig came up the stairs to play gin rummy. That was her favorite game, her favorite card game. And she was a serious player. In those days, card games were frowned upon by the Methodist Church, to which they belonged. In fact, Mrs. Craig had been a faithful member of the Methodist Church in Swissvale for many years, and my folks had begun to attend as well. In fact, I was baptized by the minister, Mr. Headley, close to your name, Mr. Headley, at that church. He was an Englishman who had immigrated to the United States. On this same day, Dad had errands to run, and as he was leaving, he called out, "Hey, have fun with your card game." Mrs. Craig retorted, "Fun? No, we're going to play for blood." After a while, the doorbell rang. Mrs. Craig went to the top of the stairs and was horrified to see that the minister, Mr. Headley, was calling. Quickly, she told Ruth to hide the cards under the cushions. And while she went downstairs to unlock the door and invite the minister in, my mother was busy upstairs putting the cards under the cushion. They sat down then and had a nice cup of tea. Now, my dad soon returned from his errands, and he recalled that the ladies were playing for blood. And as he mounted the stairs, he intoned, "Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to bake my bread." At this point, Dad opened the door to the sight of his English pastor drinking tea with a very astonished look on his face. Ironically, the cards then began slipping out from under the cushions, and I'll leave you to imagine the next scene in this drama. We still tell that story every time we get together. I have compiled a binder of many of the family stories because I feel a need to preserve them. So this is the beginning, and every once in a while when we get together, somebody comes up with another story. These stories are the threads that are woven into our unique family tapestry. And I feel it's important to preserve them for the next generations. Whenever we get together, family stories quickly emerge, for these shared stories are what binds us as a family. We remember those whom we love. We laugh at the funny stories, we recall shared adventures, and we catch up with current events. Everyone here this morning has a unique family history. Before we moved to Presque Isle, we became part of the stories of our congregational church in East Granby, Connecticut. The church was first gathered in 1737, a wooden structure in the center of town. Sometime in the 1820s, it was decided to build a new church, a more permanent structure that needed to happen. It was a very difficult decision because they didn't have any money. In fact, the first sentence in the history or the annals of that church was, quote, "We decided to build a church, but we had no money. So we became a church." What a beautiful statement of faith. Several years ago, Richard and I moved to Presque Isle to be closer to our family. Our church in Presque Isle, Grant Memorial, has its own history. My husband and I became part of the church only a few years ago, so we've been eager to hear the history and the stories of our church in Presque Isle. The story most often foretold in meetings and gatherings is the story of a fire that consumed the church, the old church, a little over 25 years ago. There is still grieving among many folks, and even in the congregation today. But there are also stories of the love and support that was received from other churches around the country and within the community. Every year, Christmen adorn the tall Christmas tree in our sanctuary. And Christmas are white or gold ornaments that are used to decorate a tree, and they often have sacred symbols like stars or crosses or angels. And it recalls to the people of our church how other churches sent Christmas from all over as a sign of hope and love and support. Every year, the story is retold at Christmas time. It is our unique story and is part of what binds us closely as a church family. You also have stories that are part of your church and your church family. Is there anyone here who would like to share a story of your church, perhaps, or even a family story? invite anyone who would like to. Yeah, Sue?
I can tell you a very short one. I have only been with this church, I've lived up this way 2 years, Andy, almost? Okay. So I've only been here a little over a year and a half. And everybody here, I mean everybody, has made me feel so welcome and so wanted, and it has just been outstanding. Because of when I moved here, what I was moving from was a very difficult, trying, terrible, horrible situation.
Oh.
And these folks all welcomed me like I was the long-lost child that was coming home. And it was great. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I have felt the warmth and hospitality of this church family as well. I thank you all. Are there any other stories? Yes.
My father and uncle and my grandfather were ministers. And my grandfather ordained both my uncle and my father at the same time in the Reformed Baptist Church. And later on, my dad became a Methodist minister. And I moved up here in '85. I moved up from a situation that was bad for me. And I met my husband at the Wesleyan Church in Presque Isle. And I had only planned to stay here for a year or two. My mom grew up here. She was born in Littleton. And Riverside Camp has always been home. And I met my husband. When I first saw him, I thought, oh, it was just meant to be. And it was. And we moved to Washburn. And I started taking ceramics at June Churchill. And when June found out I was Methodist and my dad was a minister, she said, oh, you've got to come to my church, because it was too far for me to be going to church at the Wesleyan. And because of June, I came here and I found home. And I've been up here for 40 years.
Wow.
And I've been going to church here, I think, well, let's see. Spencer will be 25, so 30 years I've been going here to church,
Wow.
at least.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Beautiful story. Yeah. And how intertwined we are with other people to create new stories, as you did with June. So, thank you. Okay. Well, as you all know, Jesus was a master storyteller. He taught through stories and reminds his hearers, and all of us, of stories that are even older than Jesus' own time. In his stories, he recalls the patriarchs such as Moses and Jacob and Isaac and Abraham. And he commands us today to tell his story, God's story, throughout the ages. In the Bible, these stories are called parables. As you heard in the reading this morning, the disciples asked Jesus, "Why do you speak to the people in parables?" And he answered them, "To you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. For to him who has, more will be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who has not, even what he has will be taken away. This is why I speak in parables, because they do not see and they do not hear. I believe that Jesus taught these stories because people who heard the stories will remember them. They might not fully understand when they first hear the story, but then they will go home and they will ponder them and try to understand the underlying teaching message. Had he lectured only, the words would probably have been forgotten, but they remembered the stories. And the stories would stay with them, and they would share those stories. The most powerful story that we can say is our own story. As we heard our readings this morning, Paul was able to tell his own story to the officials, and he avoided being scourged and sent to prison. Not only that, but he also gave testimony to the powerful message of his powerful encounter with Jesus. In essence, he witnessed to them of the Messiah who had come to save them and all humanity. We also have a story to tell. Each of us has a responsibility as Christians to tell the story of Jesus and his love, just as John did this morning with the children and the young at heart. We teach God's love to our children in our prayer groups and in our worship services, in chance encounters, in Sunday school, in Bible studies, and through our mission programs to our friends and our family. This story is ours to tell, with joy, with faith, with confidence, and with perseverance. For the story is the only story that can change people's hearts, one person at a time. And ultimately, this amazing, life-changing, heart-changing story will change the world. God has promised this, and God is faithful. So have hope, have faith, believe. Amen.